Hi, everyone, and welcome to the new Data Unification Imperative. That is a very lofty title for a conversation between the three of us, but we're going to get into that and what really that all means. My name is Beth Ziff. I'm part of Premier Response. We provide omni-channel contact center support to companies who want to differentiate themselves in the service space. And I am very, very excited to be joined by Vasili and Vikas, who will introduce themselves and tell you where they're from. And then we're going to get into that lofty title. So Vasili, let's start with you.
Thanks, Beth. Glad to be here today. I'm Vasili Triant. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at UJET. We're a cloud contact center application, and happy to be here.
I guess that's me. So Vikas Bhambri, responsible for sales and CX at Kustomer, which is a CRM for customer service platform. And looking forward to the conversation, Beth.
Well, thank you. And thanks for joining. And obviously you can tell that we all kind of have this relationship and need. We use each other's services, which is kind of cool and exciting. So I think we are the right people to be discussing this topic. So Vikas, let's start with you. And let's just talk about this. What does this mean, data unification? You know, we collect data from all different places. I know that we have a phone system, and then we have CRM tools, and maybe we have some reporting tools, and we have other technology that we may use. And so what? So we get it, we put it all together, we create some reports. What does this all mean? What is this unifying data across multiple sites thing about?
I think you hit the nail on the head there with the last statement around we do it in reports. And I think historically, when we've looked at data about our customers, it generally sits in a data warehouse or it's available to our marketeers, right? Because that's where we've been most focused on leveraging that data. The data unification story when it comes to customer experience or the contact center is something newer, right? And it's something that we're now looking to operationalize all the data that we have about the customer so that not only can we deliver a seamless experience through the agents, but also through automation as well. So historically, you know, data sat in a black box and you got to use it, you know, once in a while. You'd run a report for a contact center leader and you'd let them know, look, this is how many calls you're getting in. These are the types of customer issues you're having, et cetera. Now it's in real time, and it's actually something that can not only be actioned by your contact center leaders, but actually by the folks on the floor as well.
Actioned in real time. That's kind of very interesting. What do you think about that, Vasili? How does that work?
Well, I think that you know, that it's a perfect topic. It's something that we can all actually personalize as well, because in our own lives, whether it's, you know, dealing with products or services, or, you know, sometimes for some reason I always come back to an analogy of automobiles, right? It's if you're looking at real-time data that's going on within your car, then people could actually know that you're having a problem and solve that problem as it's happening, versus what we're used to through decades is your car has a problem. You take it in, they plug it into a computer, it pulls down the data, says, here's the problem. And then you go through the fix, and probably more damage has happened at that point. And you only know what happened after the fact, and then you get the fix. So you can take that analogy and apply it across every other experience. So when you get to customer experience, it's around, you are looking for answers. You are looking for information, trying to find something that you want to buy, or you're trying to fix a problem, or you're speaking with an agent live. Knowing that you can solve that problem in that moment has become, you know, a part of our ethos now, and part of every action that we want to have, because we're like a real-time society, right? Everything has to happen now. But what's been going on for a long time is, like, you know, Vikas said, it goes into a black box. We analyze it after the fact. So now you have the real-time information. You can determine intent, what the user was looking at online, looking through knowledge bases, trying to find that answer. And if you know it real time, you can actually solve the problem in that conversation, versus you look at it after the fact and you analyze, okay, that person called in, they were looking at these things, and you have great meetings internally within a business and analyze, oh, could have made our knowledge base better. We should have answered the question a little bit differently. And that's how we've been operating. The reality is taking that real-time data, applying intelligence to it, and actually making that happen right now while we're talking, versus post the conversation.
So that's interesting, and that's great, because that can help build loyalty. That can generate revenue. That can do a lot of things. I can think about a lot of ways we could leverage all of that and putting it all together. So that's very interesting. So what I'm curious about, though, is what we talked about, data unification. What does that mean? I'm getting all those pieces of data. Aren't they connected? Aren't they unified? What is this data unification? So Vasili, I'll start with you, and I'm going to ask you the same question, Vikas.
Well, so data unification, like the true ideal around it is having a common data lake, right? So we're going to call it a data lake, but essentially your data is in one place. And that way you have a single source of truth, one place where you can put intelligence and action on top of, and people can look at it, whether that's agents, supervisors, other managers within the business, in order to determine, what is it that we need to be doing? Or if you're going to apply artificial intelligence on top of it, that is looking at one place to grab or transcribe or action that. What happens today is data unification, because of limitations in really technology platforms out there, has become, let's integrate all these platforms together. So every application actually has its own database. It has its own data lake. So to unify, everybody starts doing API push and pulls to try to make it all happen. Now, there's things that get lost in translation when that happens, and there's time lags in those things, right? So the most common thing is everybody wants to integrate a contact center platform with a CRM such as Kustomer, but it's like a 30-minute push and pull. So if I'm trying to action something now in the conversation you and I are having, but that data is not going to get to Kustomer for 30 minutes, what conversation am I actually analyzing? So now I'm going to analyze it in the contact center platform would be the solution, but then the agent's looking at the customer interface. So if that data unification isn't happening complete and creating a true single source of truth, real time, then all the artificial intelligence and actually applying on top of it is happening at the wrong place. And that's something that has to change in the space. That's something obviously that we're leading at, is real-time data streaming, not trying to link two databases together, but truly create one single source of truth. So in this relationship here, customer becomes the single source of truth. We put all the information in one place. Like, let's not be religious and egocentric about like, I have to own the data, you have to own the data. Like, the agent is looking at that data in the CRM. Let's put it all in one place and let's send it there real time. Then let's apply intelligence and action on top of it, ultimately leading to all of us having a better experience, right?
So Vikas, before you go, before you respond to that, what am I as the rep though? So if my team, what are they looking at? Do they have to still have multiple things open? Is it just one place? How are they inputting this stuff so that we're getting it out in one source? That's kind of interesting.
That's a great question. Go ahead, Vasili.
Oh, sorry. I was sorry. So it's actually Kustomer with UJET embedded in it. So UJET is kind of the routing mechanism, but Kustomer is the source of truth, is the system of record. Mm-hmm. So they're just looking at one interface combined. Sorry, Vikas, I'll let you answer that
No
well.
problem.
Yeah.
I think, Beth, you bring up a good point, right? If you walk on most contact center floors today, you will see somebody sitting there, and now obviously if they're not sitting at home today, but maybe even if they're sitting at home, most agents are still operating from multiple monitors, right? That is what I call the data unification strategy of the 90s, which was, hey, we'll just give them multiple screens, right? And on those multiple screens, they're going to have multiple applications. They're going to have a ticketing system over here, an order entry system over here, maybe a social application over there. So now when you, as a consumer, call into that contact center, I love it when an agent tells me, and we've all had this experience, I'm sorry, our systems are running a bit slow today. And because all of us are in the business, we all chuckle because what we know, they're buying time because they're literally trying to navigate multiple applications on multiple screens, right? So what data unification really means in the contact center is a single agent interface, which they can work from, that gives them all that conversation data, whether it's telephone calls that are coming in, whether it's chat messages that are coming in, social interactions, emails. It gives me an understanding of who that customer is. So I want to know who Beth is What's her value to the company? Is she a first-time customer, a long-time customer? I want to know what order she's placed. And as Vasili mentioned before, maybe I want to know that you recently were trying to self-serve on the website, but were unable to. So now I've got that complete view of you, so I can have an intelligent interaction with you to try to resolve your problem without asking all those mundane questions that, frankly, consumers hate and agents hate, which is, who are you? Why are you here? And how can I help you? Right? It's getting
Yeah.
right to the heart of it.
Right. So many things you've said. So interesting. I think one thing that stands out for me is, yes, everybody wants that and they don't want to have to answer those mundane questions and things. But I wonder about, as because we're so security conscious and we have to worry about all of these new rules, don't reach out to me, don't call me, don't market to me, all the don'ts, lose my data. Where do you store my data? So what do we do about this? I guess I throw this to both of you. What do we do about security? How do we maintain that? How do we know we have all of this at our fingertips, but elegantly use it in the conversation and make that experience work without scaring anyone and ensuring that we have data integrity?
Well, my position on that is, leave that to our friends in marketing, right? Reality is, when we're looking at this from a customer service perspective, the customer has purchased from you, they have signed up for service, they've given you, and they're aware, right, through your terms and conditions and through your entry forms, et cetera, that they have given you certain data components, right? Whether it's their name, address, phone number, et cetera. And of course, the orders that they've purchased. Now, if you're using that data to deliver a better experience for them when they have an issue with said product or said service, then that whole, data question is less of a question. And, yes, you still have to comply with GDPR, CCPA, HIPAA, all those regulations, absolutely. But remember, we're looking at this of a customer service experience for somebody who has purchased from us, not blindly kind of marketing, not that marketeers do that, to somebody who's never purchased or experienced or maybe even signed up for any interest in our offering.
Yeah. Okay. That's so interesting. So
Yeah, Beth, I
yeah.
want to add on that a little bit.
Sure.
So I think that, Vikas is absolutely right around, you have the information, you have kind of consent on using the information to make that experience better. One of the challenges, though, that exists in the space, remember I was talking about everybody creates these databases and then they try to link them for, companies that are looking to kind of unify their data. If you have all these applications out there and each one has a system of record and you're trying to link them all, you actually now have to worry about security and privacy around every one of those data stores. And that, as Vikas says, you still have to do GDPR and PCI and HIPAA. Reality is two things. Not everybody does all those. So you may have applications that differ in both, what their certifications are and what they call in scope, but also you're having to make sure that you have 4 or 5 or 6 different data repositories that are secure. And so in our world, the message when we're talking with customers, true data unification is you look at one system of record, one place where the data is put into. So what we do between UJET and customer is take 2 typical data sources across the entire industry and the entire world. You take a CRM and a contact center, there's always 2 data sources. We unify it, we create the only single data source between a CRM and a contact center platform. And then what it is you're only focused on one place. You only have one area where you're trying to make sure that I'm protecting that PII information. So one is how I use that PII information. The second is, protecting it from, obviously right now, like cyber attacks are on the rise, right? Data breaches are on the rise. It's kind of the new, currency of, call it like a cyber warfare, right? And that's important. And it's going to rise in importance, and being able to keep one focus is going to help companies as they scale and they grow geographically as well as domestically.
Absolutely. It's interesting. So we have this one source then, and we talked in the beginning a little bit about reporting. What are we getting out of this? Let's talk about the output of that. And we mentioned that, I think, or maybe I read this or you said this about real time. I can get it now. I don't have to wait till tomorrow to get that information. I can action something immediately. Let's talk about that. I'm curious to hear both of you from from both of you on your thoughts about reporting and what should we be even looking at and measuring now that we have this one source. I'm interested in that. I think the traditional metrics go away. We don't care how fast something is happening. What difference does it make if I can do it in 10 minutes or 20 minutes, if it's a meaningful interaction and it's a meaningful experience? And again, for me, I'm building brand loyalty, or I'm getting you to buy more, or just sort of advocate on behalf of the company. I'm turning you into a brand ambassador. So those are the kinds of things that to me are the measurable, more important things. So talk to me about reporting and what's the advantage of that one source and real time.
Sure. I think, when I think about the data unification strategy around the customer, I think reporting is frankly a secondary benefit, right? Because frankly, you can get data unification through reports, right? I mean, even if I age myself a bit, right? Even if I go back into the days of crystal reports, I could connect a crystal report to multiple data sources and get a quote unquote single view of the customer. The problem is I couldn't do anything with it. It literally sat in that report where, whether it's a data analytics person or a marketing person or somebody would have to go and do something with. Now, as Vasili said before, by creating a single system of record, the really cool thing is how you can operationalize this. So let's take a couple of examples. One, your consumer comes to your website, right? And a lot of consumers nowadays want to self-serve. They would love to solve their problem themselves without actually having to engage an agent, right? So now, once that person has identified themselves, maybe by going through your app or your secure portal, or maybe even volunteering, here's my name and my email address, etc. Once you identify them, if you have that single repository, you can identify what type of customer they are and perhaps even offer up to them proactively solutions like, oh, we saw you just purchased something recently. Are you here about these pair of jeans that you just bought 2 weeks ago? And show them their order, right? And maybe they say yes. And then you could say, well, what would you like to do? Would you like to refund? Would you like an exchange? And so allow them to self-service. Now, if you don't have that single view of the customer, you don't know who they are and the fact that they have that order, then you can't have that conversation. So that's one example. The second is, how do we take the data that we have about the customer and then use that to either prioritize their issue or route them to the right team? So imagine this, somebody calls into your contact center and we identify that they are a high value customer who just purchased their first item. We might want to prioritize them over somebody who, is a low value customer, right? However you define that in your business. So you can do those things, once again, if you understand who they are. And the agent view we talked about earlier, that single pane of glass allows them to also have intelligent conversations around the customer and their issue and potential solutions, because I now know who you are. I know that you have a flight that's leaving tomorrow. So I understand the urgency of your situation. And I understand that you've booked with us previously. So I understand all of that so I can have an intelligent conversation, right? And last but not least, this whole concept now that we're seeing more and more of is this whole concept of proactive service. How do I use my data, once again, that I know that you're a customer who has purchased this product from us, and maybe the manufacturer of that product has, issued a recall. So how do I send out a notification to all those customers to say, look, before you're even aware of a problem with the service you purchased from us, we're getting ahead of it and we'd like to replace that for you. So these are some kind of real world use cases of how, once you embark on a data unification strategy, you can do some really cool things and fundamentally alter the customer experience that you deliver to your customers.
I absolutely agree on all the points Vikas said. I think the other part, as you were kind of alluding to, Beth, is the traditional contact center metrics. I mean, they're legacy. They're a thing in the past that focused on contact center as a cost center, right? So average speed of answer, average hold time, talk time, all those things. It was all around like, how do I reduce the costs of my contact center because labor is expensive, and hence why we've moved into kind of all these channels. Reality is, if we all pull ourselves out of our professional lives and put ourselves in our personal, and when we're dealing with brands and services, we really can simplify the question we're all trying to ask ourselves, right? What matters the most? And the thing would be for me is, number one, first contact resolution. And then, I mean, I guess you could call it sentiment, net promoter score, repeatability, right? Which you could also pull from, how many other times they buy products or services. But the question, and when you end that conversation, whether it be contextual, like, SMS, chat, social, or voice, is one, did I solve their problem on the first go? Two, were they happy with that? And you could either get that through sentiment, or you could potentially, everybody wants to do surveys, but I'm so busy in my life, every time United or anybody asks me for a survey, I never do it, right? So the only people that answer surveys are either the ones that are ticked, or, I don't know, they want to sit there and maybe they think they're getting a $5 Starbucks gift card or something if they answer the survey. But reality is, are you solving that problem? Two, when you're solving those problems and you look at what the reason for whether the disposition or the actual interaction was, is there a correlation across that? And does it stem to something bigger that you can't control in the contact center, something from a production line, or something from a marketing message, or something environmental out there that's causing your service a problem? You could then correlate that. And like Vikas said, you could get proactive to future customers about those problems. The other thing is, and this is a little bit lost right now because there's so many amazing marketing messages around all these platforms that you can bolt together and create automation, is, there's a huge thing about deflection right now. And deflection stemmed out of what Vikas said, is people want to, like us as customers, want to self-serve. So the technologies are coming and saying, I can deflect live interactions and save you money. But the question is, are you actually really deflecting? And this is kind of the next evolution that we're seeing with data, is, did you actually deflect me, or I just came in through a different channel? If you can unify that data and unify the platforms, you will be able to correlate, did I actually automate FCR, or did the user just come in through a different channel? Mm-hmm. Right? The way the metrics are done today is, did they move from that automated interaction to a live channel? And I can tell you from my personal experience, I typically abandon at that point and I just do something else, right? I call in or something else. I had an issue the other night with watching one of these goofy fights. My kids all want to watch the Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather, right? And Showtime.
The no resolution fight. Yes.
Yes, the no resolution even on the Showtime problems that were happening. Sorry, Showtime, if you're listening, but obviously major blunder. And, I went in to try to figure out what's going on, because my son has 20 friends over to watch the fight. And I'm stuck in a chatbot to deflect. And guess what? They deflected me because it kept going in a circle. And I never got to anybody that can answer my problem. I never even got to a live person. And that didn't solve my problem. Definitely didn't make me want to subscribe to Showtime or watch a pay-per-view event on Showtime ever again. Mm-hmm. And that is an example, a real life example of things that we see repeated over and over again in the space. And the goal here is, did I make you happy? And do you want to contact me again? Because then I'm going to buy more products and services, right? Mm-hmm. And lifetime value has overtaken cost of a contact center. Some brands have gotten it a lot. The majority still haven't, right? The majority still haven't gotten that lifetime value is that key metric. The cost to acquire a customer is less than the cost of losing that customer, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I think one of the things you mentioned is, anytime that you have any metric that, has been around an industry for so long, the practitioners figure out how to game the system. And I think, FCR is a great example, right? It's been around so long that I think practitioners know how to set it up so that when they're presenting to their CEO or executive team, they're like, look, our FCR is fantastic. But the reality is, what does the customer actually have to experience? And I think that's why you're seeing more and more people transition, for example, to customer effort. Because look, if you've resolved my problem the first time I reach out to you, but I had to get transferred to 3 agents, and I had to, went through an exhaustive list of, password resets and, rebooting my device and all of that, that's not going to want to make me purchase more from you either. So I think I agree with what Vasili's saying. I think the future state is going to be a combination of customer effort score. How easy is it for the customer to get that resolution, as well as what is the impact that the interaction they had with the, with the contact center team, with the customer experience team happened post. Are they purchasing more? Does Vasili go and purchase the next fight, right? Because you resolve his problem so seamlessly. And I think those are the two things that people are going to start being held accountable to if they're not already in that state today.
That is so very, very true. And I totally agree. That is absolutely where we're going. And the other thing that I think is so interesting is we're talking about this, and I'm always thinking about, mentioned marketing, we talk about operations, obviously IT to make all of it work. There are other stakeholders in an organization that have to buy into this notion that we're talking about, whether it's legal, whether it is data privacy and security, which we touched on a little bit, maybe it's R&D or quality. Those are key stakeholders that are interested in what's going on in some of these outputs and the data capture and things. So I'd also just love to hear your thoughts about that. And how do we sort of sell this to those stakeholders? Because sometimes the service organization is the one that's using the tools and experiencing it, but they report up through those other pieces of the organization, and they have to get that buy-in and they have to show that value, whether it's through dashboard reporting or, again, just sort of even resolving for these issues that we were just talking about. So what are your thoughts around that?
I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's what, Vasili was alluding to earlier, is you have to have a secure, scalable cloud infrastructure, that complies, right, at the very basics with a lot of the PII, regulatory requirements. But on the flip side is, how does this data not become like a black box, right? And I think that's one of the challenges with a lot of, what we call the SaaS 1.0 vendors that are out there, is the data really becomes something where, and, because of the business models of those businesses, is they wanted everything to sit in their data repository and they wanted to hold you to it. Mm-hmm. And I think, the approach we've taken is the data belongs to that particular company or brand. And we want to make it as easy as we want to make it to get data into our platform so that you can do all the amazing things we just talked about. We want to make it super efficient and effective to get the data out of the system so that you can then do your analysis, whether it's on an operational level for reporting, whether it's a data warehousing, archiving strategy, or whether it's for legal and compliance, right? Because it's amazing. Like the SaaS 1.0 vendors would tell you, well, we're only going to hold your data for 2 years. And you're like, wait a minute, the financial authority expects me to hold on to data for 7 years. Oh, well, you need to get data out of our system. And you're like, that's virtually impossible, right? I need to run all these scripts and reports and batches. And so from our standpoint, we absolutely want to enable our customers to comply with those expectations. So we allow you to stream out in real time, and real time is another, kind of thing we talked about earlier, out of our platform, every single conversation that takes place with a customer, any change to their profile information, any change to an order, all of that in real time so that you can then comply with whatever standards you're held to.
Mm-hmm. So we just have, go ahead, Vasili.
No, you go. I was basically going to agree with Vikas across the board there. So I don't have too much more to add on that one.
We're all in agreement with that. Well, I think we've covered an awful lot. We've given everyone many, many things to think about. And I will throw it back to you, Vasili. We'll start with you for some closing remarks, because this has been really enlightening for me, and I'm sure for our audience as well, about things to think about, where we are going as an industry, and the tools to get there. They're here. We could be using them. So Vasili, I give it to you, and we'll go from there.
Beth, you said it. There are tools that are here and that we could be using them. So the limitations that have existed, as Vikas called it 1.0, we've kind of seen two shifts in cloud technologies now. So we kind of like cloud 2.0 cloud 1.0 and cloud 2.0, but there's been a dramatic shift. And if you architect the product appropriately for the different use cases of the customer, one is solving the customer care problem, but also, like you mentioned, there's engineering, there's security, there's IT. Like there are a lot of things that can be done differently. And the ideas people have, you do not have to sacrifice and create limitations because you just decided to choose a couple of vendors that's how they architected their product. There is a new wave of technologies that solve these problems, that truly unify the data, that put real-time action intelligence against this to solve those problems, doing it securely and frankly, scalably. And there is messages about data unification in our space, specifically in the UJET space of cloud contact center. There is no one doing it. They're creating their own systems of record. There's a war between, do you put it in the CRM or do you put it in the contact center? Contact center vendors want it with them. CRM vendors want it with them. Reality is, we realize that customers want it in a unified system of record, predominantly the CRM. And we've said we're going to architect our platform to solve that case. It's here, it's available today, and you don't have to encompass those limitations of multiple data stores anymore. So.
And Vikas?
Yeah, I think if you're sitting there as a practitioner and you're sitting there and say, okay, today I am kind of where Vikas was talking about earlier. I'm at this multiple desktop, multiple monitors, multiple applications. And what we're talking about sounds great, but it sounds like a holy grail. The question is, how do I get from A to B? And it really is a crawl, walk, run approach, but not in a crawl, walk, run like, oh my goodness, this is going to be a 3-year change management exercise, right? I think what Vasili was talking about is the way we've architected our platforms to come together as one between UJET and customer, but then the ability to seamlessly bring data in from these other systems, your e-commerce system, your reservation system, if you're an airline, et cetera, all into one, is not something that is going to take a tremendous amount of time and effort. So I think a lot of times, particularly in the contact center space, we get to the position of, yes, we know we need to do something, but it sounds like a lot to swallow. And the reality is people are doing it. And effectively, if you're not doing it, your competitors are going to outsteer you, because we're seeing further and further competition on the acquisition side. So customer experience becomes extremely vital to the long-term success of a business.
Thank you. This has been a great dialogue, a great conversation. I hope that those of you who are watching continue the dialogue and reach out. And I'm sure you want to have many, many questions, but everything is here. You have to get started somewhere. I think you have to start with one. I love that. It's simple. Just start with one. I love it. The tools are here. So hopefully we've identified the new data unification imperative. I know we have. See you again.
Thank you so much, Beth.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vasili.
Be well.
Thank you, Vikas.